or TSA problems. There's no way.
Screwed.
And I assume there's not another flight to State College. Like
There's not.
You would have been.
I would have to go to Pittsburgh. Probably the flight. I would have to do the flight that Bryce was on.
Well, she took.
Is she on Midway or here? Okay, sorry. Never mind.
All right. You ready?
I am.
Welcome to the Your Illini Nation pregame show, live from Bloomington. Bret Beherns here along with Derek Piper from Illini Inquirer. And as Kevin Leidy likes to say, this is God's country we're in. It's debatable. I don't know. We'll discuss that.
It's pretty cool. It's one of my favorite places on the road in the Big Ten. Obviously a lot of history here and hyped up crowd for 17,000 plus here at Assembly Hall this morning.
11 a.m. Central Time game on the big one, ESPN. Illini playing without Terrence Shannon Jr. Derek, that's the big news coming into this one. Did not make the trip here to Indiana in concussion protocol. And it surprised me a little bit, Derek, because I don't remember him necessarily going down on a play at Penn State. You were there. Did you see anything that was notable to sense that he was hurt?
I didn't either, no. I know that some had said that there was a replay on TV where maybe he took a shot to the head and it was holding his ear a little bit. But we even talked to him after the game. He was one of the players made available for media, didn't show any signs of being hurt or anything like that. So came as a little bit of a surprise to me, and that's really going to hurt you. Your leading scorer and a guy that put up 26 on Indiana last time these two teams got together in Champaign.
That's 17 points a game that Illinois is going to have to find somewhere else. We'll see how they can respond to that. And for Shannon, and just some context, usually if they allow us to talk to a player after the game, they're not hurt. We don't get to talk to players that are hurt. So I don't even know if Illinois knew at that point that he had had a concussion. My guess would be, and this is just speculative, that he had had some symptoms after the game at some point, maybe a day after, then went into protocol, unable to clear protocol, and then not making the trip today. That would be my best guess out of what happened. But Brad yesterday, obviously he didn't want to let the cat out of the bag. When you talked to him, did not say anything about it either, right?
He did not, no. He did mention that need to get Matthew Meyer more shots, which I'm sure he was thinking in his head, probably quite a few more, because you're going to have his shot making that's going to be really important. Of course, he's your second leading scorer this year, and without Shannon, he's going to have quite a game. And he's done that on the road, which is great. He's been able to go to Wisconsin, had 26 points, had 21 at Iowa. You're going to need 20 plus today probably to have a chance to hang with the Hoosiers. But yeah, there was nothing said yesterday as far as Terrence Shannon's status, and after the game there in Penn State either. Like, he was made available, he seemed fine, and I would follow along with what you said, probably something that developed later after they got back to Champaign.
Matthew Meyer, the first name that comes to our mind, at least mine, and you had said it there as well. How do you make up the difference? Because I know a lot of people are going to think, oh, they don't have Shannon, they're going to lose. I have seen a lot of teams over the years come together in a sense when one of the best players goes down. They figure out how to rally. I'm not saying that's a long-term plan, but I've seen it several times where a team does figure it out. Now you're on the road against the 14th ranked Hoosiers, who have won 6 of 8 coming in, including a win over number 1 Purdue here. But is it as simple as Meyer getting more shots? How do you mix that balance today?
I think Indiana's obviously going to be expecting that, so that they'll be able to maybe throw multiple guys at him, just put a lot of attention on Meyer, who's really the one proven three-point shooter on this team in Big Ten play. He's the only guy above 30% from three in league play, so someone that's going to draw their best defender. I know Galloway they think of pretty highly as far as defensively. He's 6'4". He matched up against Shannon the first time around. Maybe he sees Matthew Meyer a little bit more. Miller Kopp is someone 6'7", has a little bit more size. But I like this matchup. I liked it for Shannon going in and Meyer both. I think that when you see Dane has to match up with TJD inside, with obviously his athleticism, his length, it could be tough for Dane to have a really good game. But I think Illinois has more athleticism kind of at the wings position and can be able to drive them and just be able to have that be an advantage for them. So I think that it is. You mentioned as far as team rallying together, I think back to the Michigan game on the road, the COVID season when Iowa was out, and obviously on paper when you take away Illinois' best player and the way that Michigan was playing, there was no reason Illinois should have won that game, and they blew them off the floor. This is one of the, if not, you could argue it's the toughest test of the season so far for Illinois when you factor in the road environment, factor in how Indiana's been playing here of late. I know they lost to Northwestern, but I think Meyer's going to have to be a 20-plus point game, 20-plus point guy in this game, and I think the Epps is going to have to step up as well. A guy that struggled against Indiana the first time around, and obviously defensively, you can't let up 80 points knowing that one of your big-time scorers out on the other side.
Yeah, the good thing, I think, the way I look at it, Matthew Meyer's not going to be afraid at the moment.
No.
He takes a lot of shots anyway. I don't think he has seen a shot he doesn't like necessarily. So I think that factors in well. You mentioned the drivers too. That's not necessarily Matthew Meyer, more of a catch and shoot guy, but can Jaden Epps continue to get to the hoop? Like, I think this team is at its best when it's aggressive, and I've been saying that for a long time, that I think Terrence has to get downhill for this team to be aggressive because he's not shooting a three. He's not here, so can they continue to get downhill? I think that's a big question coming in as well, and who's going to step up and be able to do that outside of really Jaden, right? Like,
yeah.
Who else is a driver on this team besides Terrence?
I mean, Ty is, but he's got to get the ball kind of there, free throw line extended when he's able to get kind of that mid-range. He's been doing a good job of being aggressive, showing his athleticism. I loved his finishes against Penn State. But no, he's not someone that from the perimeter is going to break you down and create a shot off the bounce. So, yeah, we're probably expecting, until proven otherwise, the three-point shooting is not going to be the best for Illinois. Of course, Luke Goody back in his home state. It'd be a great day, great story if he's able to step up and make a couple a day. I know he'd be excited to do so. I know that he's told us yesterday he's going to have a ton of family and friends here in the building today. But, yeah, Jaden's going to have to get it downhill. Matt's shown it at times. I know that he's more of a jump shooter, but he has the ability to take the ball off the bounce. I think sometimes when he does get that balance of being able to go to the rim, draw some fouls, and also hit the jumper from the outside, that's the ideal balance. Sometimes he falls in love with the outside shot. Of course, when he's hitting those ridiculous step backs and some of those, you want him to just go into shot-making mode. But I think it's really important for an Indiana defense that has an ability to really lock down, and they got to be able to find a way to get to the rim without Terrence, because you know that his finish is there, and then also his ability to get to the free throw line, things you're going to miss.
We'll talk about Luke coming up, but let's start with the big one. How does Illinois defend Trace Jackson-Davis today?
You got to double him. You have to. You look at Northwestern, I know that Indiana, you look at Trace Jackson-Davis had a phenomenal stat line, which he's been doing every game. He almost put up a triple-double there in that loss in Evanston. But that first half where Northwestern double-teamed him, forced the ball out of his hands. You do have an Indiana team that's shooting 39% from three in Big Ten play. That's second in the league. But I think that also they don't take a lot of them. So I was kind of digging through the stats. They've made 5 threes or less in 9 of their last 11 games. So they don't, while they shoot a high percentage and they've been pretty efficient, like Galloway shooting 50% from three in Big Ten play, Miller Kopp around 45. Those guys have made shots when they've been there, but on the whole, they don't really rely on that a whole lot. I think you try to take away Trace's strength. I just don't think Illinois can guard him one-on-one. I think that Dane is with it, Trace has more length on him and just athleticism, and then Coleman. Trace has done a really good job of adding some strength. He's a more physical player this year than he was last year. Of course, when you don't have Kofi in the middle, it's relative as far as the physicality and everything. But I think you got to force the ball out of Trace's hands. It's going to force the rest of your defense, though, to really be sound in their rotations, because they're going to put Race Thompson kind of opposite side of the basket. He got a handful of buckets there against Northwestern. He just camped out right at the rim, and when the double team came, Trace was able to make some really nice drop-off passes. So it's not an easy thing to be able to execute, but I think that's the best way to go about it, because his efficiency against Illinois, 35 points on 19 shots, you can't give that up again. Yeah,
I thought it was interesting yesterday that Brad Underwood said you got to pick your poison a little bit, and I think that does go with those threes. What are you going to do with that? But, like, would you rather get beat by the three or get beat by Trace putting up 30-plus on you? I mean, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. That's why Brad gets paid $4+ million a year to figure that out. But common sense would think, hey, that didn't work last time. Let's not do that again, right?
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, it's never going to be a complete trade-off. You're not going to be able to completely shut down Trace and say, let's make them take all of their attempts from three. And similar, if you're going to guard Trace one-on-one, you're not going to be able then to be like, all right, well, they're not going to take a three in this game.
Right.
So, but when you kind of think about it, Trace scoring 35 points, you got to make about 12 threes to make up that type of production. So I think that if they're open, especially in this building, every home team in the Big Ten traditionally, I know Illinois here recently has not been shooting the three that well at home, but most Big Ten teams especially have a better shot-making percentage in their home building. Tamar Bates shoots a three as well. Hood Schifino can really get going. He's had a handful of games in the Big Ten. He's made 5 or 6. So can it burn you if you double Trace and give them those open shots? Yes. I would just much rather roll the dice on that. I think it's a better bet to say, let's see if you make those threes versus guarding Trace one-on-one, let him get confidence and going, and then see if you can keep him under 30, because I think that's just too tall of a task for someone that, if Zach Edey wasn't in the Big Ten, he'd be surefire Big Ten Player of the Year, maybe National Player of the Year.
Yeah, he's moving up those ranks, and he's old. He's a senior, fourth year. He's been around here a long time. What did you make last time when Bret after the game said he wasn't worried about Trace's 35? I know that ruffled a lot of Illini feathers.
I understand the math when you sit there and say 35 isn't going to beat us. If you can take away the role players, like Geronimo was able to go inside and get a couple of buckets. You had Galloway scoring double figures,
sure.
And they had some guys also hit some threes on the perimeter. So in theory, if you're playing that math game, I understand how you might say that. I don't necessarily agree with it. I didn't hear him say, Jalen Pickett's 41 didn't hurt us against Penn State, because we all know that wasn't the case. I didn't agree necessarily with Brad's logic there. I think you have to double Trace. You got to force some of those other guys that Galloway and Miller Kopp. They're not big time scorers. Make one of those guys step up and make 4 or 5 threes, and then you can pivot and adjust if you want to. I think another thing that I understand some criticism as far as Illinois goes defensively. We went into the year talking so much about their versatility, their ability to guard so many different ways. I don't think they're very unpredictable. I think that we haven't seen this team kind of dial up and say, okay, let's throw out some looks. When they think we're going to do this, let's do this. If you can confuse Trace, make him think a double's coming and it's not, or vice versa, when he's not expecting it, all of a sudden he gets trapped from the blind side. I think that's something that Illinois could try to dial up, and I think that's something that they could pivot to and try to do. Deception is part of defense. I think we just haven't seen a whole lot of that.
Is it concerning for you that some of these guys have had big-time performances? TJD, 35. Tony Perkins puts up 30-plus. We obviously see Jalen Pickett put up 40-plus. Is it a trend? Is there something that we can take away from that, or is that just guys going off against Illinois?
It's a little bit of a trend when you think about the last 4 teams they've played who are top 25 offensive efficiency. You've got Penn State, you had Pickett. You got Indiana, Trace, Iowa, Perkins. You go back to Missouri, Kobe Brown at 31 points. That's a career high for him. So pretty much your last 4 games against high-powered offense, someone's gone for 30 and had a career night. So I can't really explain why that's happening. I think they're different because the matchup with Trace obviously is very different than the matchup against Jalen Pickett. But for a defense that's considered one of the best in the Big Ten, I know maybe even one of the best in the country. Illinois, prior to that Penn State game, was about 15th nationally defensive efficiency. You've got to be able to slow down some of the top offenses to really consider yourself in that elite category. Because while Illinois has held like Wisconsin, Ohio State, Michigan State, Rutgers, teams that are bottom half of the league as far as offense goes, they've held them in the 60s and put up some really good defensive performances. You've got to be able to do it against teams that really have some great scores and some firepower. So today we'll see if they can do that, because I think that's going to be really key.
And every one of those games that you talked about is a loss.
Yes.
So, I mean, if a guy goes off, it's not like Brad's theory in a sense that, okay, if this guy has 30 but no one else does anything else, you're going to win the game. Like, that's where I would push back a little bit on that is, well, you lost all those games and several of them blowouts where it wasn't even close. And you could really say I don't know what you consider a quote-unquote blowout. I would say 15 in my eyes, and that's really all those games, right? Going through my head now, especially Missouri, going back to like, whoa, where was that? You know what I mean? Like, you'd lost the Penn State game at home, and that was, double digits, but it was like, okay, first one of those where you really go, okay, what is this? And then you have Missouri, and you have to take a step back, and one of those turning point moments where you just go, okay, now what really is this? Because you hadn't seen that. I don't know. It's all just very interesting how we characterize this team. And I don't know. To be honest, like, as so many people ask me, like, what is Illinois? And honestly, Derek, I don't know. We're however many games into the season here. They're 17-8. And, like, I don't know. Like, do we really know?
Right. There's 2 weeks left in the regular season and still a lot of variance for this team.
Yeah.
On the note of the blowouts, Iowa was the only game where you gave up kind of that career performance and still had a close game. But I think as far as also a difference, like, they tried to do different things against Pickett, where they switched later in the game, tried to get back to their switching. They had some breakdowns and everything. Trace was just kind of a stubborn approach, saying we're going to go in with this game plan. Yeah. We're not going to double them, and then
well, they didn't double him till 8 minutes left in the game? I mean, it was late second half.
I know. I mean, honestly, I don't even really remember that effective of a double attempt to really even count it one. But as back to your original question, like, I think that we're still talking about the Texas and UCLA wins for a very good reason. Those are two of the top teams, top 10 teams in the country. But it's been a while since those games have happened, and I think it'd be great for Illinois to have another really hang your hat on marquee win, which of course here would be one, at Purdue, regular season finale would be one. That could really once again show the ultimate upside of this team. Because, well, they beat the teams on their schedule. They've still won 8 of 11. They went on a long winning streak there in January. But they traditionally when you win at Wisconsin, traditionally when you beat a Tom Izzo team, when you beat Ohio State, those are wins that really move the needle. This year, not so much. So, I mean, they've got talent, of course, with Shannon, with Meyer. An interesting stat, I was going to really think of this as a key going into today prior to Shannon being ruled out, was Meyer and Shannon really haven't had big games together at the same time. When you think about two guys that are pretty high scoring, there's been 19 high major games. Only in 4 of them have both guys scored 13-plus points. So I think as far as what this team can be, if those guys who were considered 2 of the top transfers in the portal both go off on you, Epps has been fairly consistent. They can defend. We know that Dane can score inside. This team can be one that goes on a run, but at the same time, we've seen against some high-caliber offenses in some of those bigger games, those quad one games, they haven't been able to get it done. At this point, I recognize their upside. I just think that the odds of them getting on having it all click and going on a heater and everything are a lot lower than if they have a dud there kind of in the first game or two. I think that's kind of where a lot of fans are at. Like, we know they're capable of an extended run. It's just for the most part recently, we haven't seen the high points as far as their performances. But you show up today, you win without Shannon, the conversation obviously changes. Yeah, no doubt about that. And we'll see how it plays out without Shannon on the court. If you're just joining us, Terrence did not make the trip with the Illini in concussion protocol. We'll see how they can come out and gel together. We mentioned Luke Goody has played 2 games now since coming back from that injury, scored his first points at Penn State, and it was a 3, no coincidence. You talked to him yesterday. What did you take away from that conversation about his progress and recovery and trying to get back on the court and make an impact for this team with just a couple of weeks left in the season? I know that he's excited, obviously, to be back, and he has mentioned before that his real target date originally was to play in that Indiana game at home, and comes from an Indiana family. His parents went there. His uncle's Trent Green, who played quarterback here. So this place means a lot to him, and somewhere that he, as a young kid, was thinking about, I'd really love to end up here in Indiana. So the extra motivation of coming back to his home state, a program that didn't offer him a scholarship, I think there's that motivation. Like I mentioned, the family and friends are going to be here, but he's been able to up his conditioning. He's talked about feeling really well physically, not having pain in his foot. To be able to see one go in a game, I know he said was a big deal, making that corner 3. There's been a lot of those shots that have come for Illinois in this offense. I know we've seen R.J. Melendez miss a lot of those. I think when this offense is really humming, when you get Shannon downhill, of course you won't see that today, but Epps, Meyer, play through the post with Dane, you can kick it out to that corner. Luke can make some of those shots, and really in a place where Indiana can get on runs, it can be maybe a 3 that just kind of stems the tide and make sure they don't, it's a 5-0 run versus an 11-0, a 12-0. Illinois can really use that floor spacing, that 3-point shooting. So, and he's also a guy, we've seen it in his limited minutes, plays his butt off. Like, he's all over the glass. He's looking to dive on the floor. He's going to compete defensively. He's establishing himself right now where he's checking in before RJ. I know that Ty's been right now your best player off the bench, and Sincere's getting a good amount of minutes too. But as you kind of whittle down that rotation, it seems like Luke's that 8th guy right now, and RJ's kind of on the outside looking in until he starts making 3s. I know he made 1 at the very end of that Penn State game. Yeah, Luke didn't have a Purdue offer either, right? He did not. Look, that's going to hang with you a little bit there. Whether he says it or not, like, Indiana kid, no Purdue, no home state school offer from Indiana. And I think he's going to be a good player at Illinois. We'll see how that kind of plays out here at the end of the season. All right, other notable matchups you're looking forward to today or keeping an eye on as you watch this game at 11 a.m. on ESPN? Got 2 really talented freshmen at point guard. Jalen Hood-Schifino's had a great year, a guy that 6'6", can really play in that mid-range. He's got a really awesome pull-up jumper, very smooth game. And also, he's pretty athletic, too. He can go downhill. And I think that as far as the matchup goes, you probably don't want to throw Epps on him because of the size disadvantage. I think you want to play Epps probably on Galloway or, that's probably the most ideal as far as defensive matchup for him. But obviously, Jaden, for the most part, it's been a pretty consistent double-figure scoring output, especially you're going to need it today without Terrence Shannon out there. I mentioned earlier, he struggled in that first meeting, was 1 for 8 from the field against the Hoosiers. Of course, Trace being around the rim, he's the top shot blocker in the Big Ten. That can really hinder a guy that wants to kind of score in the paint. But maybe if Trace is coming over to help, that's where you look for the dump-off passes, look for Dame. Maybe a guy cuts the basket from the perimeter. That can help Jaden a little bit. But I think that matchup's really key. If Hood-Schifino, as I mentioned, he's had some games where he's made 5 or 6 threes. If you're going to double Trace and Hood-Schifino jumps up and makes some, that's going to really hurt you. I think Ty Rodgers, the way that he's been performing, one thing that I was looking for when he was starting to really emerge against Nebraska and Minnesota, can he do it against higher level competition? He's doing it now. I mean, he had a really good game at Iowa, really good game at Penn State. This is another one of those where it's kind of all hands on deck. Need some real shot in the arm performances. I think that Ty could give you one. And then on the other side, like Indiana brings Tamar Bates off the bench. He's a top 50 recruit that's a sophomore now. He's kind of an X factor. I know that those that cover the Hoosiers say that when Tamar's playing well and comes in and is making shots, Indiana's pretty tough to beat. So I think the contributions off the bench for Illinois, Ty being a big focal point, Luke, and then Jaden Epps versus Hood-Schifino at the point guard spot.
All right, how's it all add up, Derek?
I don't think too well for Illinois. It's going to be really tough. Again, we've seen kind of backs against the wall in spots where you wouldn't think a team would hang. I wouldn't be shocked if Illinois hangs in there and plays kind of with their hair on fire and a little bit of desperation. Not that they need it as far as the resume. It'd be really a big win, but I think ultimately the Hoosiers being at home, having the best player on the floor, and Illinois right now, it's really tough to go on the road and not be a team that makes a lot of threes and to be able to hang in there. So I think Indiana 74, Illinois 64. I thought with Shannon it'd kind of be a 5-6 point win for Indiana. I think that him being out makes it double digits.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on that. I think the line opened up at 5.5 Indiana before the Shannon news came out. Have not looked to see what that has jumped up to, but I would think that's worth 4 to 5 points for Indiana's side on that. I'm going to pick a little bit higher for Indiana. I'm going to say 78 to 69. I think it needs to be close there. We'll see if Illinois can make it. The one good thing about shooting a lot of threes is when you connect, you have a chance. Yep. Can they make that many threes? That becomes the big question. And I think that's also the concern NCAA or Big Ten tournament time is if you're not making those threes, are you that good of a team? I don't know. I think Illinois can be pretty marginalized when they shoot 30 to 40 threes in a game, which Brad has said he doesn't care about. Like, he just wants good ones, but still, it's like at some point, when those threes are going to kill you.
Yeah, when you keep ending the game 25% or maybe even below from three. I mean, they took around 30 at Penn State, shot 25%, and it's just not...
It's not sustainable long term.
No, it's
to
not.
Have success.
Right, and I think even when you're a really good defensive team, when you get in the tournament, just guys have big games and teams get hot from the outside, even when they're contested, and just be able to kind of hang in there and be able to counterpunch without shooting the three well. You're going to see a lot more zone. You're going to see teams pack the lane, which of course we've kind of witnessed here in recent weeks for Shannon, for Dane Danger and whatnot. You really, as you think about it, being able to have enough firepower to win those games and just kind of open things up for your best player, Shannon and also some of your other ones in that lane area. If Illinois doesn't do that, it's going to be hard to imagine they go too far.
All right, 3 keys and a pick. What else you got on the site, Illini Inquirer?
I know that Joey wrote about Luke Goody coming back. He had a notebook as far as his return, as Ty's gotten more confidence. You can read all about that. We also wrote recently about Zachary Perrin leaving and what that means for the program. So, Joey and I are here to cover it, and we'll have post-game coverage as well.
All right, we'll look forward to that. You'll hear from Brad Underwood on these same digital channels after the game. Listen to his post-game press conference live here from Bloomington, 11 a.m. Central Time on ESPN. We'll see if the Illini can hang without Terrence Shannon Jr. Moving forward, and the big question with all these games coming up is if he's not cleared today, is he cleared Monday against Minnesota? You would think that Illinois could still beat a bad Minnesota team without him on Monday. But then all of a sudden you get a second-place Northwestern team next Thursday. Who would have thunk it with their schedule? Like, wow. I wasn't buying stock for them 2 weeks ago when they played Indiana, when they played Purdue. Well, they checked both of those off. Now they still have a tough road here to end it, but are they in the tournament regardless, no matter what now? They've
got 10 Big Ten wins. They've
got
a lot of quality on it too.
There. Yeah.
They've won here in this building.
8 quad 1 wins.
Yeah, they swept Indiana. They beat Illinois and Evanston.
Crazy.
They beat Purdue and Evanston. They won at Michigan State. So barring maybe losing out,
Yeah.
which maybe even then they have a pretty good shot to still get in, but they play Iowa on Sunday in Evanston. So they had a 3-game homestand. Can they go 3 in a row,
Crazy.
taking down Purdue, then Indiana, then Iowa? I don't know. I think it's been a lot of people just sitting there and saying, nah, Northwestern will go away at some point. But Audige and Bowie had a hell of a shot there at the end of that game, and they're playing some really, really good defense too. So definitely one you can't overlook in Champaign on Thursday. And Illinois would really hope that Shannon is healthy and back ready to go for that one.
Indiana fans wanted an offensive foul on Bowie there late. Didn't get it. It's going to be all right, Indiana. Indiana's in the tournament as well. All right, for Derek, I'm Brett. Thanks so much for watching the Your Illini Nation pregame show. We'll see you here after the game.